Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar on how to prepare a proposal. It's now 5 after. There's still a few people that will need to connect, but I think we can start. I will just adjust my microphone because I think it's a bit too loud. Okay. So welcome again. I'm really glad to have a lot of people participating to this webinar. It's the second in a series of webinars that we are giving as part of our new College Industry Innovation Fund. So this webinar will focus really on how to prepare the proposal for the Stream 1 application to this fund. So with me here, I'm a senior programs officer at the CIIF, and with me I have two of my colleagues. I will ask them to maybe switch their cameras on. I have my colleague Anne Rouleau, who's with us today. Anne? Oh, I don't think we can hear you. I don't.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me now? Sorry, I'm not sure why.
Well, Anne Rouleau. Okay, well, there's maybe a little bit of problem with your microphone. Anne Rouleau will be helping me today. She will, all the questions you might have that you will write in the chat box, she will write them down, copy them, and we will make sure we answer all your questions either during the session or after. Also with us is Sylvie Boucher. Sylvie is also a senior programs officer at the CFI, so we are three people here to answer all the questions you might have. So for the rest of the session, we will turn off our cameras and just use our microphones instead, but we wanted to greet you in person. So let's begin. Okay. Okay, so here today we have a lot of people, automatically invited were all the CFI liaisons of the institutions that submitted an NOI in June, but also open to any other individual who's interested maybe in submitting a proposal in the future. So before I get into the subject, we will just go over some of the functionalities that might be useful for you in using this platform. Okay, so here I've captured probably what you have on your screen. So if you notice here, there is your main tool will be the chat box here. So all the questions you have while I'm talking, you can enter them here. You can write to all the users here, or write a message only to the leaders. But generally it would be nice for all the participants to see the questions from everyone. Anne, could you please turn off your microphone?
Yes, I think it works now.
Okay, great. Okay, we will be primarily using the features that are located here for you. So you have a zoom button if you want to see the slides a little bigger. You can print any of the screens that you see here, and you also have a notepad to take notes while during the webinar. Most importantly, you can download a number of documents that I've also sent you by email, the proposal mock-up, the frequently asked questions document for the fund, but also the presentation itself. So you might want to do that at the end of the presentation. But also this presentation will be recorded, so you will be able to hear it again afterwards. So feel free, like I said, to post your questions in the chat box. I will stop at some time to answer specific questions, and the other questions will follow up with messages after the session. Okay. So today we will just give you a brief overview of the CFI. I think a lot of people already have heard some of our presentations during our info session tour this spring, but we'll present the main objective of the new College Industry Innovation Fund, the evaluation criteria, the timeline, but mostly the proposal, and also give you a few tips on how to increase your chances of success. So the CFI, as you probably have heard, was created in 1997 by the Government of Canada to fund research infrastructure. So its mandate was to strengthen the capacity of Canadian institutions. And Canadian institutions are universities, college, research hospitals, and non-profit research institutions to carry out world-class research and technology development for the benefit of all Canadians. The CFI supports all fields of science, so not just the natural science and engineer, but also humanities, arts, and health sciences. So basically what the three federal funding agencies fund, which are in SHIRC. One important particularity of the CFI that all its decisions are first and foremost based on excellence, so no other strategic consideration but excellence. That's the main point. Also, all funded projects generate an allocation of 30% of the capital award to help offset the cost of operation and maintenance of the CFI infrastructure. I will speak more to that later on. As you know, the CFI is a matching fund program, so it funds up to 40% of research infrastructure. And by requiring institutions to develop their own strategic research plans, the CFI ensures that decisions about areas of actual potential research strengths are taken from the ground up as institutions as well as the provinces identify their own priorities for the CFI proposals. So I wanted to touch base a little bit on how we work here at the CFI in relation to our institutions. So we work a little bit differently than NSERC, for instance. So we thought it might be useful to fill you in on this aspect. So in our programs unit at the CFI, we are 9 senior programs officers and 3 programs officers. So each senior program officer is responsible for a portfolio of institutions across the country, as well as 1 province. And for each 3 SPOs, there is a program officer who helps coordinate the work. So basically, each institution that is granted eligibility at the CFI is assigned a senior programs officer and a programs officer. So likewise, the CFI requires the institution to designate a CFI liaison. So all the communication between the CFI and the institution should transit between these 2 individuals here. So the role of the senior programs officer will ensure that there is a follow-up on all funded projects in their portfolio. Your Senior Programs Officer will provide advice on all CFI guidelines. So basically, that person is your one-stop shop for all things CFI. So for instance, I, as a SPO, I make sure that I gather all the appropriate information from our other units at the CFI so that I can be your sole point of contact. So in the same way, we expect researchers or project leaders to contact their CFI liaisons at the institutions for questions and not the CFI directly. So that's what we want to encourage in the future, that everything transits through the CFI liaison. So the CFI liaison is the person that has been designated as such on the institutional agreement you have signed with us. So if you see that this would require a change in the future, you just need to let us know. And also, I just wanted to give you a heads up on the Notice of Intent Administrative Review. So we have finished our review of those. So it's possible that your SPO will contact you in the next week or so regarding some clarifications. Okay, so as you know, the College Industry Innovation Fund has two streams. So stream one for research infrastructure alone, and there's $20 million for two competitions in this stream. Right now, for stream one, we have received 33 NOIs. In round one. For stream two, there's a lesser budget that was put aside for that. So $5 million for two competitions in partnerships with the CCI NSERC grants. So right now we have received 13 of those in round 8 of the CCI program. The reason why we have a lot more money in the first stream is that we expect most institutions to already have CCI, active CCI, so it was more likely that our applicant institutions apply in the first stream. And also, as you know, each college could submit one application in each competition. So now the number of NOIs give you an idea of the competition that's ahead of you. Okay, so as you know, the new fund that we've put together is really focused around business innovation. So there are 4 major objectives: to stimulate competitive college industry R&D partnerships for business innovation. So the objective here is to enhance R&D capacity, provide highly qualified personnel with opportunities to participate in R&D activities, and all of this in a hope to generate some regional or national benefits for Canada. So when we talk about business innovation, there are a lot of different definitions out there. The one we like to use is adapted from the OECD definition. So the creation, adoption, or adaptation of knowledge and technology to help to develop or improve a product, process, or service with the goal of improving the productivity and competitiveness of a company or a sector. So you have to really keep this definition in mind when you're writing your proposal, because this is the core criteria, I would say. Okay, briefly, I will now go into the timelines. Okay, so last week was, well, a bit more, 2 weeks ago was the notice of intent deadline, and also the deadline for the strategic research plans. There is no formal assessment of the notices of intent except for an administrative review. So all those that have submitted a notice of intent can submit a full proposal. There is no selection. September 30th is your proposal deadline. So in the meantime, the NOIs help us start putting together the evaluation process. So as soon as we get your application, we will have our committees ready. Oh, I can see here there's been, from putting my presentation on this platform, there's the characters have been a bit muffled up. So I will not get into the detail in this presentation on the evaluation process, but it's a two-step evaluation. So all the proposals will go through an expert review, and who will probably see 1 to 3 applications, and then all the applications will be assessed by a multidisciplinary committee who will then see all the proposals together. But again, all the proposals will go through both stages of evaluation. There is no expert review. And depending on the province, there might also be a parallel review of the proposals, but we're all working together to meet the same deadlines. So the main deadline is that our multidisciplinary committee will meet in January. In March, the recommendations of the committee will be approved by our board of directors, and shortly following that will be the public announcement. And I wanted to just give you a little note on finalization. So unlike the CCI grants or other grants you may have received, CFI awards are not automatically paid out after the decision has been announced. First, you must finalize the award. As described in our policy guide, you'll find a big section on that. And for this, you will have a maximum of 9 months. So if you're very quick, you can start getting the funds as soon as April 2012, but you will have until January to finalize the award. So I see I have a question here. So I have a question on the budget for the fund. So I'm asked if the 20 million for stream 1 and the 5 million in stream 2 will be split between the 2 rounds of the competition. Well, yes, but for the stream 1 budget, 20 million the 20 million will likely not be divided in 2 equal parts. Our initial idea was to allocate 13 million for the first round and 7 million for the second round, but this is flexible depending on how many applications and also if the level of excellence is there. So I hope this answers your question. Okay, so if I go back to finalization, the finalization of the award, so this period of 9 months that we give you is mostly to be able to secure your financial contributions from your other funding partners. It also means that you will be asked to update on the price of your items that you want to purchase. So we will probably hold more information sessions once the funded projects are announced, so you will get a lot more details on this. So as you know, the second competition for Stream 1 is exactly 1 year later with roughly the same deadlines as the first competition. Okay. Okay, so a few tips now. Now that most of you have sent in your NOIs, before going into the details of the proposals, I just gonna give you a few tips on the process of what you should be doing now. So the program description, very important to have a look at that, and the review criteria. Have a sense of what reviewers will be looking for. Read the instructions and the key elements of the application forms. Uh, You also need letters of support from your partners, a budget justification. You can also add, like we will touch later, 2 pages of extra material that you can submit through a PDF. So you have to think about that ahead of time. Read the specific instructions for each section of the proposal, because you really need to address each point, but I will touch back on that a bit later. And also, importantly, pay attention to the project summary, because that's the first thing that reviewers will read. It gives you the first impression of the proposal, so maybe it's even best to write it at the end of the proposal, but don't neglect the project summary. Special attention will have to be given to the budget. So for this, I really suggest you have a look at our CFI program guide that is available on this webinar platform for download. And also, you have to please pay careful attention to your writing style, because you have to keep in mind that your audience will be experts in the field of the proposals, but also our multidisciplinary assessment committee has to understand what the proposal is about without being an expert in the field. Okay. So at both levels of the evaluation process, proposals will be assessed on the basis of the 3 criteria listed here, which in fact correspond almost exactly to the objectives of the fund that I have presented earlier. So contribution to business innovation. So as you probably remember from the call-up for a proposal, there are a number of sub-criteria to each of these criteria. So business innovation, what we're looking for is college has a strong track record in building and maintaining partnerships with the private sector. The activities you propose are clearly in response to existing needs expressed by your private sector partners. We want to see that it will enhance the R&D capacity of your institution. So how will this infrastructure will boost your capacity for forging additional partnerships? Is this in a specific area in which you have developed a niche of applied research and technology development excellence? Has the college provided any significant support and shown substantial commitment to this area in the past? So these are things we are looking for. And also, if you have a plan for sustaining and making sure that the infrastructure continues to be relevant in the future. And the last criterion is benefits to Canada, which is a historically CFI trademark criterion. So the way the proposal was designed is that we have translated these criteria and sub-criteria into 7 sections of the proposals that you have here. Okay, so this will be more clear when we look at the proposals, but for each section we will provide a standard. So this standard represents the bar which must be met to satisfy the sub-criterion. So the reviewers will judge whether the information you provide in each section meets this standard. So this is a bit different from other applications say CCI applications, where you have a number of criteria and information required in the proposal, but here is, unlike CCI, it's not a free-form proposal. It's sectioned into sub-criterions that must be met. Okay, so just here a brief summary of what the proposal looks like, but then after I will go directly into the PDF and we'll look at the proposal itself instead of continuing with this presentation. So in purple, I've put the 7 subsection of the project module here, but in addition to that you have cover page and project summary. Okay, and also there will be a section that will collect performance indicators. Okay, a little bit like the CCI proposal. This is not for evaluation, it's more to track your progress from our point of view. And there's also a financial module to this, because this here is the project module, and there's also a finance module for that. So in total it's about 40 something pages, but very comparable to what you have probably submitted to the CCI in terms of quantity of information. So for the next bit, we will look directly at the online form. Okay. So here I have it. You have the cover page. So on this cover page, it's similar to the cover page of the NOI. The budget here can be updated from what you have submitted at the NOI stage, because you will probably know a lot more. You will have to know exactly what items that will be purchased for this project, so you'll probably have a better idea of the amount requested from the CFI. Okay, next page is the project summary. Okay, so the summary, like I said, is very important to have to provide a overview of the full application. So this will set the tone for the rest, so it's very important. Okay, so the college capacity and track record. So you see here on top here is the standard that must be met in order to have a successful proposal. So for each of these sections there will be a standard that must be met. So reviewers, what they will do is, with the information that you have provided in this section, will determine whether this statement has been partially met, met with satisfaction, or in excess of expectations, or if it does not meet the level. So it's very important that you address all the sub-questions in each of the sections. So for the college track record, we accept proposals that enhance R&D capacity in college. So for example, those who have received CCI grants or funding from provinces or industrial sources or from any other source. So that's what we'll want to see here. So it's to tell the story about the applied R&D capacity that has been developed in the past in a strategic area of importance to you. So we want to know what has been done so far and what are your performances so far. So the main message here is to build on your strengths. So the proposed project should show should be in an area we have some capacity. Okay, so it's important that you try to answer at best all the different questions, because that's what the reviewers will look for when they determine if you have met the standard or not. Okay, I think we have a question here. Okay, so I have a question on the length of each section. Yes, there are characters. I've been asked. I'm just being asked if the character count is flexible or not, or is just it's just a guideline. Well, actually, no. They're hard-coded into our online application forms. So if I just go back to the documents, to the main oops, the platform is a little bit slow. Okay. So the number of pages for each section are not flexible. So there is a number of character associated to each of these. I think one page from memory is 2,300 characters, and you will have to use those limits as you write your proposal, because the system will not let you enter more characters. If you do, your text will be cut off. So that was our question here. So now if I go back to the application form. Okay. So contribution to business innovation. So this is really the core of the proposal. So what we want to see here is a 5-year applied R&D plan for your research activities with your existing and future partners, using the infrastructure that you will describe in the next section. So you have about 4 pages here to explain all of this. We will also be requiring up to 5 letters of support from your partners. So each letter can be 2 pages. So you're not obliged to supply us with 5, but you can at least 1 and up to 5. You'll also have the chance to append a PDF file to include graphs and pictures and plans in your proposals, but that can relate to any other section. But I think in the online form you will see this in contribution to business innovation. But just remember that you can use these 2 extra pages to provide graphs or schematics for any other section, and you can perhaps number the figures and relate to them in the text afterwards, because as you know, the text here of our online forms are only basic text. You cannot enter special characters. So if you have to put an equation in there or a graph, you can use those 2 free-form pages in PDF. Okay, so the standard here is that the proposed activity meet the needs of the college private sector partners and have the potential to lead to business innovation. So what we want you to do is to talk about your short-term objectives, but also your long-term objectives. So we want a plan right now, what you will do as soon as the infrastructure is in place, what will you do with your private partners, and also very important, their level of involvement in the project. So we want to see a schedule and milestones associated with your activities, immediate expected outcome on the short and medium term in terms of business innovation, but we also want to know how you will seek new partnerships and how the infrastructure will stimulate new partnerships with the private sector in the future. So this is really the most important part of the proposal. So please make sure that all the questions here are addressed with satisfaction, because there will be a lot of focus on this in the review process. Okay, need for infrastructure. So here you will describe the overall need for your infrastructure. What are your current needs of the college and of your partners and stakeholders? So your project here must be really beyond the conceptual stage. At the stage of the proposal, you need to know exactly what items you will require for your project. Not a vague idea of which items, but you really will need, as we will see in the finance module later, you will need to know exactly what you're going to buy and what's the price of each item, because we don't allow for changes in the future. So you must be really set on what you will purchase. So that's a difference from CCI proposals, where you can have a rough idea of the infrastructure that you will acquire, because there is 20% of the budget in there that is possible to spend on equipment. And then, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in their grants to reallocate some of your budget into another section. But here it's a little different. At CFI, we fund specific items, and there's little flexibility on reallocating some of parts of the budget to another area, unless there is a strong justification to do so. Okay, so in this section you will need to briefly describe the requested infrastructure and indicate its location. It's important because we need to know that it will be located at the college. Okay, I have a question, a clarification on what I said about the itemized list. I said there was little flexibility in changing, allocating some of the funds that were meant for one line item in the budget at the time of the proposal, and then how, if later on this can be changed. Well, usually we don't expect significant variances, but we do have some flexibility when there is a good justification. So before there is any change, you must contact your institution CFI liaison, which will in turn communicate with their SPO to get prior approval for any deviation in the budget. So it is possible, but you will need to have our approval before you do this. But I will really get into that later on when I talk about the budget. So I will answer all your questions at this time. Here I just want to point out that in this section it's mostly a description of the infrastructure and not yet its cost or the justification for the cost. That will be in the finance module. So here we want to know where the infrastructure is located. It's important it's located at the college. If it's not, you need to provide a good justification for that. You have to explain how the increased capacity will benefit your partnerships and help the college form new partnerships. So that touches a little bit on the previous section. Okay. You have to describe how the new infrastructure will complement existing infrastructure at the college and in the region, and where applicable, you should address potential duplication at the regional and provincial levels, because this is important, especially if there is this capacity in your area already. You have to explain how this is different from what so and so is doing. So this will be important, especially for the expert reviewers who might know that there is already this capacity present and wonder how your project will differentiate itself from the rest. Okay, sorry, I just had a, a message and I was reading the chat box. Okay, so here there is a section on sustainability of the infrastructure. Okay, there are 2 pages for that. Okay, so one narrative section on sustainability and one with 2 tables of budget. Okay, so this section, the budget and narrative sections, are there to see how you manage institutional risks. So the infrastructure in successful application needs to be sustainable over the long term. So we want you to have a good plan and institutional commitment to ensure that the infrastructure will be operational, will be, will work optimally for the 5 years following the implementation of the infrastructure. So I wanted to, before getting into the details of this budget, go back to my presentation and talk to you a little bit about the Infrastructure Operating Fund. So let me just okay. So as I said in the introduction to this presentation, that with each CFI contribution, actually it comes with an additional 30% bonus. You can see it that way, a bonus that is there to cover your basic operation and maintenance costs to ensure optimal use of the CFI infrastructure. So the infrastructure item to which this 30% will go to must have been funded by the CFI. So let's say you have you get $100,000 from the CFI, you will get an additional $30,000 to take care of operation and maintenance of your infrastructure. So on all the projects you have submitted today, this is automatic. The CFI has in reserve for you a 30% of its contribution. But the way it works, it's not distributed up front. Okay, it works a little bit like a health insurance claim. You have this money at the CFI that you can access, but you need to claim it. So you get a refund upon presentation of a receipt up to a certain maximum, so a little bit like an insurance claim. But the Infrastructure Operation Fund has its own set of rules. on what is eligible and what is not. So that is described in section 4.6. So for instance, eligible costs for the CIIF are salaries of the technicians that will operate the equipment, also services such as electricity, security, and cleaning to maintain this infrastructure, replacement parts, some maintenance and repairs, extensions to warranty coverage and software licenses, extended warranties that were not included in the infrastructure award, and also the training of the main operators. Okay, but some costs are not eligible, but you will find this all in our policy and programs guide under section 4.6. The CIIF never expires, so even 5, 6, 7 years down the line, if you still have some funds remaining in your CIIF envelope, you can still continue to access it. And the CIIF is claimed annually. Every month of June, you will claim your annual expenses. So this is how it works roughly, but you can have a lot more information in our guide. So I will just go back now to the presentation. So the CIIF comes as a bonus. You do not need to plan for it in advance at the time of the proposal. This is something that you will make use probably 2 or 3 years down the line, at least once your infrastructure is operational. Then you can start claiming your infrastructure operating fund. But I just mention it here because you will have to keep this in mind when you do your budget, when you prepare your budget in the sustainability section of the application, which is here. Yes. Okay, so as you can see here, we will ask you to estimate the costs for operating and maintaining your research infrastructure that you are requesting in this proposal for the 5 years following the implementation of this infrastructure. So we want to know the costs and personnel, supplies, maintenance, services, and others. So this is, you will not be held up to this. This is for our information only, and also for the reviewers, we want to make sure you have a good plan to ensure the sustainability of this infrastructure. But we will not hold you to the specific numbers in there. We want to have a brief overview of the costs to operate and maintain the infrastructure, which is a good source of information to the CFI, and knowing what is the burden also on institutions to sustain this infrastructure. So this is very important to us. So the first table is the different sections, the different categories of cost, also the funding sources in table 2. So the reason why I mentioned the CIIF fund, the infrastructure operating fund, is that you should include this in the institutional contributions. Why institutional contributions? Because the CIIF is actually given to the institution as a bonus, and should you have, say, two ongoing CFI projects, each receive 30%, you're actually free as an institution to use up these funds on both projects, or on only one or two depending on where the need is. So as long as it goes towards CFI funded infrastructure, we allow institutions to reallocate internally between the different projects, this different CFI projects, the amount of IOF. But it's important that you should include this in this section. So bear in mind that you have this 30% automatically, 30% of your capital cost as support for infrastructure maintenance. Okay, so the narrative section of this sustainability part is for you to explain your plan. Explain your plan on how the infrastructure will be implemented. So we want to see milestones from the key milestones from starting to put in place this infrastructure to a fully operational state. We want to know about the day-to-day operation of the infrastructure. Here you will have a section where you can justify the budget that you have entered on the previous page. So you can justify your costs for operation in this section, provide more details on it. We also want to know in this section how you will manage access between internal and external users of the facility. So let's say you have private sector partners that come in and use your, well, use your infrastructure as a service. If you provide a service to private sector partners, we want to know that. Or if you have other users that can actually come in and do some work themselves in the infrastructure. All these things were applicable. We want to know about them in this section. And what's important also is that we know if there's a plan for ensuring the long-term relevance of the infrastructure to the private sector. So how do you plan to perhaps commit more funds to maintain this infrastructure at a level where it's still attractive for partners? Okay, now we get into a section where we go more into the participants of the proposal. Okay, so the first page here we are requesting some biographical information on each of the key participants. So you had up to 8 key participants. And so we're not requiring you to fill out CVs, because when you go into your account on the CFI Online's CAM system, you have the possibility to fill out an online CV. You can, but it will not make its way to the proposal. So instead what we ask here is a brief paragraph, roughly half page of biography for each of the key participants. Okay, and this will be useful for the next section. So there is no standard per se on the bio section, but it actually feeds into this section here, which is all about the team. So what the reviewers will look for is does the team have the required expertise to carry out the proposed activities with the requested infrastructure? So in this section, you will have to describe the role of each key participant, included their weekly time commitment to the activities, the team's overall expertise regarding the operation and of the infrastructure requested. We want to make sure there's people that know how to use the infrastructure on site, and describe also how the team proposes to keep current in the field. So that's where you can describe all that. I think you have 2 pages to do so. No, actually, I'm sorry, you have up to 5 pages to do so. So you have a lot of room to explain how the team complements, how complementary to each other in this proposal. So there are a number of maybe some proposals where you'll be tempted to just write the project leader as the sole participant of the team. Well, bear in mind that the reviewers will look for synergy and expertise to cover all the aspects of the proposal. So it's important that you include the right people in this section. Okay, the next section is all about students. So we've adapted our definition of highly qualified personnel here to colleges, because in our previous definition we mostly talked about graduate students, which not necessarily applies to most colleges in Canada. So what we mean here by highly qualified personnel is technicians, any post-secondary students, or any other research personnel. Okay, so it could happen that some of your HQP have been included in the section on a team. So a technician can be a key participant if this person is absolutely essential to the project, but could also alternatively be included in this section here. So it gives you some flexibility. Or you could also duplicate or relate to what you have said in the previous section. Okay, so what we'll be looking here is for evidence that students will gain some experience on this state-of-the-art infrastructure. That's what we want to see. Okay, and that you will provide with students and technicians an environment where they could get some experience doing some R&D with the private sector. Okay, the last section, like I said, this is the CFI trademark, benefits to Canada. Here we want to know how your activities will lead to benefits for the region and to Canada. Okay. Benefits to Canada not only means commercialization or business innovation, because you have touched that in an earlier section, but this section could include your strategy for knowledge and technology transfer, what you expect in terms of longer term impact on your key stakeholders, on your user, on your sector, and the people in your sector. So for example, do you expect any change in policies, environmental benefits, or increased competitiveness in the region? You can describe your vision here and the potential impacts of your research. So it's more or less the same as the CCI, or very similar. So here I think you have 1 page to describe all this. Okay, I have a question asking me if it's important that the applied research tech transfer activities, if they need to be new. I don't necessarily think that's the case. If it leads to increased competitiveness for the private partners that you are working with, well, this is the aim of the project. But you could have new or existing projects as well. Okay, I'm just going over the questions here. I had a few. Okay. So if I don't have any more questions on this section, I will now go to the finance module. But perhaps we would like to make a short break, a few minutes break for you to get water or use the washroom. If you, in the meantime, think of other questions in 5 minutes before I start with the finance module, I will take some time to review all your questions and answer them before I get into the second part. So I'll see you back in a few minutes. Now I have exactly 2:05, so let's meet back again at 2:10. Okay, I'm sorry for the slight delay. I was looking at all the questions we have received. So I will go over a few of those. I was asked to clarify the total number of pages for the section on business innovation. So you will have 4 pages of free text to explain that section. Let me just go back. Okay. So you have 4 pages of free narrative, and you also have the option of an extra 2 pages in PDF that can be uploaded from the section. There's only one upload of 2 pages, so you must put all this information in the 2 pages that are provided. That's the only opportunity here you have to submit figures and charts and other information, because to answer another question we've received, all our online application form unfortunately do not accept rich text. So only basic plain text is accepted. So these 2 extra pages that can be uploaded provide you with this opportunity to put in equations or charts or figures or pictures. That's the only opportunity. I was also asked whether you could build upon an existing CCI application. Yes, there's absolutely no problem doing that. This is totally acceptable because the CCI funds the research activities and not the infrastructure. Of course, there's an infrastructure part in the CCI proposal, so you cannot uh, get funded by the CIIF for infrastructure that's already in place and that has been funded through the CCI, but you can build upon an active CCI. So the infrastructure you are asking can be for that same project. Okay, another question was if the list of participants, of key participants um, can be updated from what you have submitted at the NOI. Well, of course, you are encouraged to include as many people as possible here that are essential to carry out the activities. So your team, as you know now, is an important criterion of evaluation. The reviewers will want to make sure that all the individuals are that you have all the individuals there to be able to carry on the project. And in the team, you're not limited to faculty. If you have one of your private sector partners who's really involved in this project, that will really commit time and expertise, this person can be mentioned in the team. Okay, so you're free to add up to 8 participants to have 8 biographies here. But if you have more than 8 that contribute, you can also name them in this section here. Okay. So I think that's all the questions we've received. If there are any more, please use the chat box. So now we will continue with our presentation. Yes, so I wanted to show you here a little bit about the performance indicators. So the performance indicators are a bit like what CCI is asking its applicants. So this is information that will allow us to track your project, and these will be updated regularly at the moment where you do progress reports. So this is to see how successful the project is. So we're asking you to provide these indicators. Mostly here some are similar to what CCI is asking, and then the rest of them relate more to the infrastructure themselves. So for instance, the number of faculty now using the infrastructure, the number of staff excluding faculty, the number of HQP using the infrastructure, and so forth. So we're asking you to estimate these numbers at application and provide some projections. But these projections are only for our planning purposes only. So we don't expect you to be able to know what the future is made of, but we certainly are interested in knowing what is your goal, and you will have opportunities to update this in your project progress reports. So 18 months after you have finalized the award, 36 months after finalization, and then later 60 months after. So I know it's probably difficult at this point to project these numbers so far in the future, but we ask you to do the best you can, and the actual information will be collected in time. Okay. Okay, so now we're touching base on the most important part for us, because we want to know exactly how you will spend the funds that you are requesting from the CFI. So instead of going through this finance module, which is actually a series of tables of all the breakdown, the summaries of the costs, the costs associated with your purchases in the first 4 years. Okay, so you may plan to purchase one part of your equipment in year 1, another in year 2, and year 3, and year 4. So we will adjust our installments according to the time, according to the period where you will acquire your infrastructure. Okay, so you'll have 2 tables of summary, and then also a table that outlines the cost of all the individual items that you plan to purchase. Okay, and then you will have another section where you can justify that budget. So explaining in words, a narrative section to explain exactly everything that will be purchased. Okay, so I will go back to this a bit later. Now let's just go over what is eligible and what is not. So just trying to get to the correct slide. Okay. Okay, I think we'll have a number of questions on this part. I will take some time to answer them as soon as I go over these next few slides. Okay, so the CFI funding is really intended to support research infrastructure that's made up of a collection of items that is supposed to be known at the moment of the application. So it's important to understand that unlike other agencies, the CFI only funds specific items that are detailed in the proposal. So this is not a grant. You cannot just provide estimates of how much will eventually be spent in this or that category, specifically at the time of your application, which items you will purchase. So what are the eligible costs, okay, that can be covered by the CFI? Okay, the CFI funds up to 40% of any type of equipment and component, computer software, scientific collection, databases, and also minor construction or renovations to house the CFI infrastructure. Okay, so for this college fund, we're trying to restrict limit the amount of renovation or construction you can claim. I mean, we want these costs to represent a reasonable proportion of the total cost of the project, perhaps 25% or less of the total cost of the project. Of course, if you have a project that involves significant construction, but that these will be covered by another source completely and are outside of what you are requesting from the CFI, like this is acceptable and should be described in the proposal, but should not be counted towards eligible costs. However, like I said, retrofitting of buildings, for example, adding a small addition to an existing building, as long as the costs are reasonable, this is acceptable. Okay, so an example would be to install a ventilation system or change a classroom into a lab, to have existing space fitted to your new requirements. That's perfectly eligible. Okay, but you can go to section 4.5 of our Policy and Programs Guide to get more information on what's eligible and what's not. For instance, what's not eligible would be the purchase or lease of real property, access to high-speed national and regional networks. This is not covered by the CFI. One thing we see a lot is office space. Office and meeting room space and furniture are not eligible costs. We support costs for research. If it's a lab station, like an office, but that's sort of a lab, there are some cases where this is acceptable, but I would really advise you to contact your senior programs officer at the CFI to clarify, well, to verify your items are indeed eligible items. Okay, consumables are not covered either. So printer cartridge, CDs, DVDs, memory keys, all these things are not eligible. And as you know, the direct costs of research are not. So teaching release, travel, student stipends are not eligible. Okay. Okay, so like I said, the CFI contribution is limited to specific infrastructure items identified in the proposal. And CFI will cover up to 40% of the infrastructure cost of the proposals. So colleges are required to find financial partners willing to commit the remaining 60%. Okay, the following partners are eligible. So private sector. Again, the private sector can contribute towards this funding, but is not obliged to do so. We need participation from this private sector in your proposal, but not necessarily a cash contribution. But if there is a cash contribution, great. It's eligible to match our funds. The institution itself can provide matching funds. Provincial and federal departments and agencies are eligible partners. Not-for-profit organizations and also suppliers are a source of matching fund. So typically what we see is that you get 40% from the CFI, another 40% from the province. So that's why it's important to contact your provincial representative if you're not sure of this. And the other 20% usually comes from either suppliers who make special rebates or the college. That is typically what we see. So can we leverage in-kind contributions which were identified in the relevant CCI grant we may hold? So I know that tri-council funds are not eligible matching funds. Okay. However, private sector contributions, I believe contributions though are eligible if they count towards CFI eligible items. So that's the thing. So if you have a private sector partner paying for the salary of one of your technicians, let's say, or one of the key participants, I mean, well, since the salary of the faculty member is not an eligible cost, well, this could not leverage the CFI grant, the CFI fund. As long as it's towards something cost that is eligible at the CFI, any contribution from the private sector in the CCI is an eligible partner funding source. Yes. Okay, and the cost for shipping, transportation, and installation of research infrastructure are all CFI eligible. Just wanted to add this note to my list that I gave you earlier. Okay, I have another question. So would the salary of a technician be eligible if they are involved in the quoting process to source infrastructure equipment? Well, as I understand, the technicians will not be the people doing the actual purchase, but yes, their work in the design and conception of the project and what infrastructure needs to be purchased, yes, would be if they are linked to the infrastructure proposal and will take part in its implementation, then their salaries would be indeed eligible. Okay, so only cash, like I said, cash and in-kind contributions are eligible as long as they are towards eligible costs. So in-kind contributions count, and you will have, once your proposal has been recommended for funding, approved for funding by the CFI, you will have 9 months to secure the sources from your other partners. Okay, so in-kind contributions. Okay, really important because they are counted in your maximum. When we go back to the slide and you will see the table in the finance module, you will get a better picture of what I mean. But so in-kind contributions count as a matching fund. Okay, so the most common kinds of in-kind contributions are either equipment donations or supplier discounts. Okay, but this needs to be really a special discount over and above the regular institutional discount. Okay, so institutions are responsible for ensuring that cash and in-kind contributions from partners have been made, as well as expenditures incurred after the eligibility date set for this fund, which is April 1st, 2011. Okay, so anything that you have already purchased now or have quotes for is eligible, okay, to be counted towards this proposal. Okay, so expenditures are considered incurred when goods are received, services have been rendered, or work has been performed. Okay, and we expect we expect items to be reported at fair market value. So when there's an in-kind contribution, so the fair market value will be the net price of the item plus any special CFI discount. Okay, and we expect a formal competitive bid process as per your usual tendering and purchasing policies to take place prior to the purchase of each item. Okay, so this requirement should be really communicated at the onset. So you as institutions should not make any purchase commitments to suppliers. Okay, with so many partners involved, it's important for colleges for you to be aware of these regulations. Okay, we need for you to have all this all the justifications for these costs, for the cost of items in your files. Okay, as we will see a bit later, so your shopping list basically can be broken down into different categories. Okay. The cost of individual items must be known, and you must provide a justification for them. Okay, you don't supply us with quotations, but you must have them on file. So right now, as you prepare your applications, you should either ask for quotations or have a definite knowledge of the price of the items you want to purchase. Okay, so the cost must be estimated at fair market value and all your bids must be kept on file. You will have the opportunity when you finalize the award to update those bids. So when you write your application, you are allowed to include some contingency in those prices. A cushion of that would allow you to, well, think ahead if you're going to buy something in 2 years, just for the increase of cost of living. So inflation, you can factor that in. So you have your bid on file, but you can add an extra cushion in case, knowing that you will have to update this in the future and the prices might change. But we would like you to be reasonable in the amount of cushioning you put on those numbers. So something around 5%. And if you know that if you're going to buy a something from the United States or something, you can estimate brokerage fees and customs to cover this purchase. So that could be added to your final price. Okay, so normally for the contingency for construction, I know because construction costs are often difficult to assess at the time of the proposal. So for that, we ask you to normally allow for a 10% contingency in your construction costs. As for items, normally something less than 10%, perhaps 5% is what we see regularly. I'm sure my colleagues Sylvie and Anne can confirm if on regular items 5% is what we normally expect. I have a number of questions that I haven't answered. Okay, so cloud-based applications. I'm not sure about this one. I understand the economical factor in here. Like if you have, you want to, instead of having a server at the college to run some applications, you just rent some space on a cloud. I don't think we have a defined policy on this, so I will have to get back to you later on this one. So please, Anne, if you could write this question down, we could maybe send you a reply after the presentation. Okay, I have another questions for complex proposals where renovations and equipment are requested. Is the cost of a project manager for the installation phase eligible? Yes, it is eligible, and it's described in our guide. So if you have a look at the guide, you'll have a good idea of what is eligible. Okay, so I will continue. So in the finance module, you will also be asked to provide also the infrastructure utilization percentage. I think it's best if we look at the proposal itself to know what this means. And also you will be asked to explain your partner contributions. Okay. Okay, I think it's best now if we go back to the proposal itself, and you can ask your question directly on what we see. Okay. Okay, so the previous page, you are asked to list all the, you will have a summary section where all the items, all your equipment, lease, personnel, all the estimates in those categories will be summarized here. But importantly, you will need to know exactly the cost of all the individual items that you plan to purchase and the quantity. So what we ask you at the application stage is to try at best to give us the total cost of the item and provide information on the in-kind and cash contribution. So if you have, let's say, a a piece of equipment that's $100,000 total, you might have 80 $80,000 that will be paid cash, with another $20,000 that happens to be a special discount from the manufacturer. Again, this discount must be over and above any institutional discount that you might have. Okay, this is really well described in our program guide. And so we ask you to name the partner and also specify when the item will be purchased. Okay, because that will help us plan for the disbursement schedule. Okay, so for each item that you plan to purchase, we need to have this information by the time you submit the proposal. And of course, you will, between the 9 months between the decision and the finalization, you will be asked to update all these quotes. So there will be some variation expected. We know that the prices will vary. You are expected, yes, to have about 5% of flexibility in that budget. And if it's a more significant amount, let's say there's an increase in price, your item ends up being double the price, well, the CFI will not review its contribution, will not increase its contribution. So you will receive the same amount from the CFI, and then you will have to try to cover the cost of the increase with another source. So either by the institution, usually from the institution. So that's why it's important to have a good idea of how the prices might fluctuate in the future. Okay. So here you will explain your budget. Here you will provide some details of all the funding from all your other eligible partners. So all your partners, partner type, cash contributions, in-kind contributions. If those contributions are secured or expected. Okay. So for those that are not yet secured, you will have some space to describe how you plan to secure those sources. Okay. Okay, another important part here is the utilization percentage of the infrastructure. Okay, as you know, the CFI will provide infrastructure that is necessary to conduct research activities. But say you are using this infrastructure in large part for training that is outside of the R&D activities. Okay, so there's a difference if you have a student working on a project, I mean, with a private partner, so it's leading to contributing to the actual R&D project, and it's not just a project that's there for training purposes. Well, then the percentage of utilization for research would be 100%. However, if you plan to use this infrastructure to teach classes or to really use it as part of the curriculum, the CFI will only contribute at the pro rata rate of prorate actually its contribution to the use, the percentage of use dedicated to research. So this is important. Okay, and this ends the financial section. So here you have an additional chance to supply us with reviewers. All of you have supplied the minimum of 6 in your notice of intent, but if you do want to change those names or provide additional reviewers, additional suggestions for reviewers, this is your place to do so. Okay, so this ends this was the last page of the proposal. So are there any other questions on the budget or what needs to be put in this section? Any other questions? I'm just going over the chat box now to see if I have missed any. So do you have to repeat the reviewers from the NOI? Are they automatically included? I'm not sure if our system will automatically paste those. Sylvie, do you know the answer to that? If the online system will retain the information from the NOI and copy it back onto the proposal for the suggested reviewers? My answer from Sylvie is that we don't think it's the case. Unfortunately, you would have to re-enter them or simply just add the new ones that you want to add to your list. But then again, I'm going to wait for Sylvie's definite answer, because since there's a minimum of 6, the system will probably not let you validate your proposal. Okay, so I have other questions here. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the exchange rate, you must also factor in your contingency possible fluctuation in the exchange rate, because should now the dollar, Canadian dollar is very strong, let's say, if it were to go down and then your item that you were going to purchase in the United States becomes suddenly a lot more expensive, well, the CFI again will not increase its contribution to meet this unfortunate event, so you have to plan for this as well. Okay. Another question is, now that we've had 33 NOIs in Stream 1, asked to comment on the plan composition of the MAC committee. So how many committees will there be? Well, there's 2 stages of review. All the applications will be first reviewed by experts. So there will be some proposals in similar fields will be regrouped and reviewed by 2 to 3 reviewers. Okay, and the MAC will be composed of about 10 members. 10 members from a variety of backgrounds, well, a mix of academia, but from the college sector, with people from industry. So very similar to what we see on the CCI committees. So yes, just one MAC committee will review all the proposals, but the MAC committee will have reports from all the expert committees that have reviewed the proposal. So there are 2 steps in this evaluation. So the first committee will actually meet by teleconference and provide a consensus report to the MAC committee. Okay, so going back to the reviewers, so the suggested reviewers will not be reinstated automatically in the proposal. So you will have to enter new ones if you wish, but you will be able to validate your proposal even though you have not entered anything in this section. So you don't have to rewrite them all. You are free to add new ones if you want, but if you are correct with the ones you have supplied in the NOI, that's fine. Okay, I have another question on page limits. I'm sorry, I have a comment on the page limits, but I cannot find the original question. Okay, so if this question is still not been answered, please ask again. Otherwise, I will just continue with the rest. Okay, so I just wanted to remind you what are the different steps for your online submission. So it's a bit like the NOI. So the project leader and key participants have to have their researcher accounts. So I know for the NOI, sometimes the participants were not included because they did not have time to set up their accounts and validate their participations. But now is the time to ask all the people involved in the proposal to create an account, because this will require the consent of all key participants to the proposal. So normally the project leader creates the proposal online through our CAMS online system. You should not fill out the PDF version of the proposal and send it to us. It has to be filled out online. Okay, as the project leader includes key participants, an invitation email will be sent to them and they will have to consent to participate in the proposal. Okay, when all the consents are received, the project leader will submit the proposal to the institution. So revision of the proposal by the institution can return the proposal to the project leader if there's something that needs to be corrected. So there is sometimes some back and forth between the institutional and the project leader. Okay, and the final submission is done online by the institutions to the CFI. Okay, and we also expect you to send a signed copy of the proposal to us, postmarked on September 30th. Okay, so it doesn't have to be here on September 30th, as long as we have the online submission and that you have mailed. Okay, a few other questions. Okay, where do you attach the letters of support? And what about cover letter from president of the institution? Well, you don't need a cover letter from the institution. Actually, if you do send one, it will be removed from the application that will go to the reviewers. So bear that in mind. Only the full proposal as it is will be submitted to, will go through the review process. And the attached letters of support, I think you can attach those from within the CAMS system. I need to make sure of that. I'm not 100% sure at this point if these are sent with the paper copy or these are attached in the business contribution to business innovation section. Okay, I have a confirmation here saying that indeed you will be able to attach those in the contribution to business innovation section. So these will be appended to your proposal online. Another question is, we are not sharing the NOIs online. For some other programs, sometimes we have put all the NOIs online. Well, not the NOIs, but the title and the institution. Okay. So we're not sharing the NOIs online, and we had a comment here of how can the proposal targeting similar industries can be aware of each other. Well, it's up to institutions to partner with themselves. But as soon as all our funded projects end up being on our online system, so all the CFI funded projects are visible to the community once they are approved. Okay, so I just wanted to maybe finish here with a few tips again. So what are your keys to success here? Member infrastructure needs must be aligned with your institutional strategy, because your institutional strategic research plan will be provided to the reviewers. So when we look at the section on the track record and the infrastructure request, we need to see that there is an alignment there. So that will be judged. Okay, we encourage you to start early and be proactive with your staff. Perhaps determine internal deadlines with your researchers on what should be provided to you. Okay. Get partners involved early. Okay, have your shopping list ready. This is very important. You have all your items ready, because you will not be able to add items that easily after the application stage. I mean, there's some flexibility, but the main point to remember is that once the CFI has approved its contribution amount, it will not revise this amount. So if there is a change, it will have to be done within that budget. The CFI will not increase its contribution should you determine at a later point that you needed another item. Unfortunately, you will have to stick to what has been proposed. Okay. So a best practice to have maybe in your college is to have an internal review process to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal. Okay, so have an internal reviewing process will probably increase your chances of filling in the gaps and avoid being assessed, maybe unfairly by the committees. Not unfairly, but if you don't provide all the information that is required, you might not succeed in this round. So make sure that the more readers you have, the more chances you have to counter such events. And very important to consult the call for proposals, look at the merit criteria, remember what we are looking for. Also look at our policy and programs guide online, and I cannot stress enough the importance of this resource. You have a senior programs officer that's there to guide you in knowing what is and is not eligible. So please don't be afraid to contact us if you have a question about something that is not outlined in our program guide. And that's the the main point I think to do here is to tell you the plan early and to contact us. So also ask another question. Can there be changes from the LOI equipment list to the full proposal list? Yes, of course, because in the NOI it was very a brief summary of the list, so we didn't expect to have all the information, that's for sure. It was only for to understand what the proposal was about and to have an idea of the type of request we were getting. So it is expected. Okay. So if there are questions that we have not answered today, we will go over the list again and make sure that these are answered in our future update to our frequently asked questions document, or we will send you a message later on. Okay. Before I leave, I'm asked to confirm that we include the anticipated provincial matching. Oh, well, yes, of course. When you will outline your budget with all the funding sources, of course, the 40% from the province should be part of your budget. Okay, so I know there's a number of questions, but I will try to answer these later on. The presentation can be downloaded directly from the interface here. On the right bottom left corner, there is a link written documents to download. If you click on that, you will be able to download the presentation. Whoops. I forgot to make it public. I will do this now. No, it's public. Okay. Okay, but I can make sure that you get it and send it to you by email separately. Okay. So thank you everyone for your time. This has been a long session, a little over our 2 hours. I know there's a lot of questions there's a lot of information in here, so please don't be shy to contact us because we expect to have a lot of questions from you in the upcoming months. And thanks again for participating. Tomorrow there is another session in French for those who would like to participate as well. So please let us know, and we would appreciate your feedback on the session. Thanks a lot, and good luck. And for all of you going on vacation, happy holidays. And we will talk to you shortly in our future information sessions. Thank you.
Allô? T'es plus en ligne, Sylvie. Peut-être. Mais je te vois pas en ligne. Là. Je peux pas rentrer. Oui, c'est ça. En tout cas, mercredi, tu es capable de faire, tu es demain matin. Mon document, puis je vais le nettoyer. Mon invité ici.